Welcome to Science Solutions Santa Cruz. This is a special recording. We've got a live audience here today. We are in the Lawful Lease Room at the Seymour Marine Discovery Center, and we have an incredible guest with us today. Welcome, Julie Packard.
Thank you, Jonathan.
So the last time we were sitting across a table from one another, we were at Gail's Bakery, and you gave me some advice, which actually led to that very exhibit, Seymour HQ, that we were just looking at just now. And we were talking about it, and you said to me, you said, hey, you should really lean into the sort of the science center identity and really lean into the local identity. And that's exactly what we've done here. So I want to just say thank you for that advice, because that was a transformative moment.
Well, that's good to know. I mean, I thought we were just meeting up for Gail's Pastries, which is always worthwhile. But yeah, well, I mean, I've been in the museum, aquarium, science interpretation space for, many decades, not saying how much. And I mean, I love it. It's so cool, all the different ways that we can communicate science. And this place, the university is doing amazing science. So that's the point of differentiation for sure.
Yes, it is. So before you were one of the most influential aquarium directors in America and one of the most influential voices for global ocean conservation, you were a student right here at UC Santa Cruz.
I sure was. And my everyone always wants to know my trajectory. And, people always assume I had some story like Sylvia Earle, like, I grew up and snorkeling in the coral reefs or whatever. And actually, I grew up over the hill in what we called then Santa Clara Valley. They didn't call it Silicon Valley yet. We old timers don't like that. It's not Silicon Valley. Santa Clara Valley, the Valley of the Heart's Delight. And growing up there and seeing the incredible pace of growth and land transformation there, and also being a teenager in the 60s, of course, in the thick of all the environmental movement protests and everything, really definitely shaped my point of view. But growing up in our family, it was all science all the time. My dad was an engineer, and there weren't really expectations for the girls in the family at that time. But, you had to do well in school. And so anyway, I was the black sheep in the family. I was the only one who decided not to go to Stanford and went to this brand new little campus in the UC system that only had 5,000 students, no grades, and was definitely didn't have much of a reputation yet. And I came here in 1970 and had the most fabulous undergraduate experience imaginable. It was just so great. I mean, I picked it because I knew I wanted to do a biology degree, but I also knew I was really interested in environmental science and in, I didn't think about, I want to become an activist, but I want to make change. I was really fired up about conservation. And, as many of the listeners may not know, UC Santa Cruz had like one of the first, if not the first, like environmental studies department, like in the country.
Fact check, Cindy, fact check.
Okay,
it's true.
True. And this is a really big deal. And it was multidisciplinary, which was really interesting. And it was policy and, it was political science and natural science and all of that. Anyway, I went the straight bio track, but mainly I wanted to, not go to Stanford. That was my main goal, to be honest. Anyway, it was like the best decision ever. And the thing about it was, of course, the campus had been started with this huge focus on undergraduate education. And I know it's much larger now, and I know that commitment still exists and is a huge thing. But back then, with only 5,000 students, it was like they definitely were able to make it real. And so I had the opportunity to, get hired by my professor and work in the lab, and then started doing field work up and down the coast here. And the faculty was pretty small, and I didn't really have any. We never went to the ocean as kids, really. We were like mountain people. We went up to the Sierras. And so took an intertidal biology class that was surveying the intertidal zone at a bunch of sites from in the bay all the way up to Pigeon Point. there was the invertebrate crowd that John Pierce led that part of the class, and Bill Doyle, who was a liverwort biologist, but he covered.
We got a liverwort fan up in here today.
Yes. Yes. Ask me about liverworts. Anyway, see, why do people laugh about this? Liverworts are very exciting, but interesting. But Bill Doyle, he covered all the lower plants, which meant mosses, liverworts, ferns, and algae, like all together, which was kind of crazy. And then there was the higher plant classes. But anyway, that was when I got exposed to intertidal biology, and he hired me to key out and start the herbarium, the algae herbarium. There's probably like pressed seaweeds still in the UCSC herbarium with my little name on them, 1971. And and I loved it, loved the experience. But then I became one of those students, as there are many of us here in Santa Cruz, raise your hand, who never left, and wanted to figure out any possible way to stay here and not have to go off and have a legitimate, career someplace else. And so I stayed working up on campus for a few years on people's research grants and TA'd some classes and this and that, did some TAing down at Hopkins Marine Lab and this and that. And then my family, actually, my older sister and her husband and their colleagues, they had the idea to build an aquarium on the site of the old cannery. So actually the aquarium was not my idea, although I get all the accolades because I'm the one that actually was tagged to do the work.
Was it because you went to UCSC
happen.
and not Stanford?
Yeah.
And they're like, you're up.
Well, no, it wasn't. But I'm like, okay, I went to the hippie school and who's run a $100 million institution all these years?
Well, Julie,
never mind that, right? Yeah.
I know you love kelp. I know you love algae. So take us back to the lab. Really, think about that moment. Maybe it was a late night. Everybody else had left, and you're just geeking out on this kelp and algae. What did you? She's not the only one. There's plenty in this room that.
Why are they laughing?
So take us back to that moment. And was there anything that you perceived in kelp or algae that just really fired you up at that age?
Well, of course, going out tide pooling, for anyone that's had that experience as a student, was amazing. And just seeing the incredible diversity of life forms there and the adaptations and the beauty. I would say the beauty of these life forms they were amazing. And I appreciate art. I do some science illustration myself, and just these things are freaking beautiful, but also they're just their adaptations were so incredible, for what they, like many species, I guess. Every species has some interesting way that it's evolved to live wherever it lives. But I was just really fascinated with that. And I guess, it was a challenge, learning all the taxonomy, because algal taxonomy is pretty obscure. And I can't tell you why I found it interesting, actually, but except it was one of my first jobs. It was the first kind of legitimate job I got that wasn't, kind of stuff you do as a teenager. And when my professor offered me this job, and my father had lined up a summer internship for me at Packard, and he was really mad. He was not happy when I said, no, my professor offered me a job, Dad. And I'm going to stay here in Santa Cruz and identify algae.
And now he's got to go to explain to his friend what's going on.
Yeah. So part of it, I don't know. I can't explain it. But, I think anyone that's a diver or been out in the tide pools or certainly isn't, gazed into the kelp forest exhibit at the aquarium, it's stunning. It's a beautiful, stunning environment. And it's certainly not, it's not just about the fish, that's for sure.
There's several scientists here at UCSC that are studying kelp today. Malin Pinsky, Christy Croker, many others. Those two have actually been on this show. Are you keeping up to date with the latest in kelp science?
Not as up to date as as the science teams, but yeah, we've been pretty involved with that at the aquarium. And our connection mainly being all of our work with sea otters, because we're kind of grand central for southern sea otter recovery, and any orphan pup or injured adult comes to us, and we doctor it up and hopefully get it back in the ocean. And so this whole matter of kelp forest loss, one of the pieces we've been involved with from a research standpoint is looking at the role of the sea otter population in kelp forest recovery. And then, of course, it's an iconic exhibit at the aquarium. I mean, of course, we funded a long-term study of basic kelp forest ecology here in the early years of the aquarium, just because it's the type of research you can't get funded. I mean, no one will fund many, many years. So we're like, what kind of research should an aquarium do? We don't have a ton of money, but let's do some long-term nearshore ecosystem research. So we've always had an interest in that area. And then, of late, we're collaborating with a bunch of research going on. And there's just a lot of angles that scientists here are working on. There's a lot of speculation about what's happening and a lot of ideas about, is human intervention helpful, or is, we more need to identify kelp forest patches that are naturally resilient, because some of them are doing okay and recovering. And there's a lot of, our role, one of the things about the aquarium is we're not competing for funding with, the different science teams. And so one of our really helpful roles is as a convener. And so we actually did a big convening. The head of our California research program, who came up from, I think, UCSC originally, she hosted a convening where a lot of UCSC folks were there for everyone just to weigh in on what they thought. And actually the interesting specific role of the goal for the convening was, and I think a lot of the science community and people here could probably comment, they were concerned that there were a lot of interventions going on and there was no standardization of data acquisition and research design. So people are doing all this stuff, but we're not really going to be able to analyze or understand, is it making a difference or not? Because there was no standardization or agreed upon, data approach.
Now that's really interesting, because one of the things that jumped out to me in conversations with Malin and Christy and others has been, there seems to be a lot of interest and even funding in kelp research right now up and down California, maybe even beyond that. But one thing that struck me is that there doesn't, at least from what I've seen, there doesn't seem to be a scalable solution to restoring these forests that everybody agrees on. So it's interesting that you say that there's, even on the scientific end, there's still some disagreement about how we should be doing the science or where we should be studying. Now, do you think that the fact that there's interest in science and funding for the science, and the fact that there's not a scalable solution, do you think that's just the natural path of how science leads to solutions, or is there something unique about kelp that makes it a more challenging problem to solve or scale?
That's an interesting question. Probably others could, because I guess what would want to come to my mind are what are other examples, that we can learn from, and probably others can think of some. I can't think of any immediately, but I can kind of tell you my take, which, others may or may not agree with, is that a lot of these interventions, getting them to scale is exactly the problem. And we're all happy about, trying to recover the sunflower sea star. The aquarium's involved with that. Nature Conservancy's doing a lot of funding of that. There's work going on, as we all know, which is great. But, to take that to scale, I tend to be okay, who knows? I don't know if there have been any examples where, something has gotten pretty much, down to not biological extinction, but ecosystem extinction,
Collapse,
if you will. Yeah. And humans have reintroduced it, and it's all been good. That's kind of in an ecosystem of this nature. I mean, the kelp forest ecosystem already is really altered. The sea otter population is way different than it used to be.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, the southern sea otter, as probably most people know, was thought to be extinct here. It used to be a continuous population from, Russia through the Aleutians and all the way down to Baja, and then the fur traders wiped out all the otters in California up through Oregon, and the southern population, is only recovered from a tiny little group of animals that were hanging out in a little cove down in Big Sur. And the, say, 3,200 animals that we have, something around that now, has regrown from that time just over several decades, but it's growing very slowly. It's growing more slowly than people would like. And the science behind that, some of which has been done here, the kind of the prevalent point of view about it is that this habitat area, may be saturated with otters. It's at carrying capacity, and that's why there's discussion now about, do we need to establish a new area for otters to expand to, which would mean translocating some otters to a new area, TBD. And this is like super controversial, and there's been, talk about it for a number of years, but there's actual planning going on for that now, and it would be many years before something would get approved to do anything about it. But meantime, we're doing all we can to up the number of otters of otter pups that we're able to rescue and successfully release to the wild. In the beginning, when we first started working in the aquarium, we're like, well, we don't want to have any marine mammals. We're about showcasing, all the other wonderful things in the ocean, but of course, we got to have sea otters, because we're really into the kelp ecosystem and got to have sea otters. And so there was a local vet at the SPCA that was taking in any orphan pups, and no one knew how to keep them alive. So there was so many things we had to figure out over all these decades. How do you keep them alive? Then how do you raise them so they're not bonded to humans, so they can thrive? Because we would release them and they'd jump in kayaks, or they'd not thrive, and we'd have to bring them back in and fatten them up and then release them again. And then finally we came across, kind of by happenstance, an adult female who had lost a pup, who took an orphan pup under her wing. And then we've realized that other adult females would do that. So we have this cadre of surrogate otter moms that are raising the pups and teaching them what they need to do, because the pups stay with the mothers for many months, and they have to learn to forage. There's a lot of things they need to learn how to do. And we've been expanding that effort, where now we have colleagues at Long Beach Aquarium that are doing the same thing. So we want to up everyone working on the southern sea otter. The idea is, if we can up the number of pups that are rescued and raised for release, then if and when it's figured out where you could release more of them to extend their range, we would release a group of them, because we've done some trials releasing one or two, and that hasn't worked out. So I think the idea is you need to release, a number together so they could hang out. Where is TBD, and a lot of controversy and discussion will happen around that, I'm sure.
Well, first of all, congratulations on that. Thank you for that work. That I hear. You said something a minute ago about your role being convener, right? Because on this show, we talk about science leading to solutions. And I often think about, what's the Seymour Center's role, right, in Santa Cruz, in making this connection and bringing people together, and what is our role in advancing these solutions? So using that otter expansion example, what does that role actually look like in terms of convening and actually mobilizing the science to inform solutions and making it all come together? What does that look like? What does that feel like?
Yeah, well, that's a big question. I've kind of been working on that problem of linking up scientists with the problems and solutions and the decision makers for a really long time. Actually, mainly through my work as a trustee of the Packard Foundation, which I've served on the board for 50 years. We all went on there when we were in our 20s, and we've always had a conservation interest area. My father was into land conservation. He was a hunter and a fisher. He's what we call a hook and bullet conservationist, which, groups like Ducks Unlimited are the largest conservation funders, of land conservation.
Real
in
allies
the country,
in all this.
total allies.
Yeah.
And we are always funding science too, like our Packard Fellows program. And so we've tried out a lot of different things around, can you get the big environmental advocacy organizations? How do we get them to do more science or have more of a science, function? Or, how can you get the academic scientists out of their laboratories to, go testify in Congress? And it's still a slog. It's getting a lot better, but kind of more practically speaking, I think more and more, like the more we learn about nature, the more we know we don't know. I mean, it is just such a case, and same for how the climate works and how the ocean works and all of it. And so, I mean, I do think more and more people realize the importance of gathering people from different disciplines together. Like, you didn't used to see that at all. And things are still really siloed up, and I'm sure, your academic colleagues would have examples way more shocking than, like I experience, because I'm in my happy, we're just here to serve the public at the aquarium and give people hope and get them excited. And I mean, the way I think it should work is, to have the policymakers identify, this is the information that we need from you scientists. And that is often hard to pull off, because the scientists, they're developing the information to identify the problem and to come up with solutions. But there's still work to do, and just getting people together in these fora, because time is running out on some of these issues, and I think people are a lot more motivated. Like this kelp forest convening that we had, no one was talking about kelp forest loss 5 years ago, or even 2. I mean, it's all in the news. It's so crazy. I'm like, Macrocystis pyrifera is in the news, never thought I'd see the day, and not for a good reason, but so people are more motivated. I know that's a big answer, but
well, let's go there, because you've championed this idea that if you fall in love with the ocean, you're more likely to protect it, right? Conserve it. But a lot of the modern discourse on these issues these days is powered by fear and rage. And sometimes I wonder, I'm like, is fear and rage, is it winning? Is it winning out? What do you think about that?
No, it's totally not winning out. I think all of the, at the aquarium, of course, because we're in essence a communication organization, that has live animals to do our mission of communicating and getting people inspired and getting people to care. And it's really, I think a lot of the research over time, and certainly how we've come around to think about it, we are a bunch of scientists, we got to tell people all this important stuff, which is why we fell in love with the ocean. And now I think people realize, no, I mean, the goal is to get people, to have an affective experience in their heart. It's not like, oh, I'm, want to learn about this thing. And it's like, care about it, and then you want to learn about it, and then you can, learn about what you can do to protect it. But the doom and gloom, I mean, there's whole bodies of work around, I don't know all the names for it. You've probably, the folks here do, like climate despair and climate overload and climate, it's just too much bad news. So we really, over the years, more and more just really focus on the hope. We have to give people hope. And there's a lot of research actually done sort of around the conservation advocacy world, looking at, for all the advocacy work that's happened, why are we still where we are? And a lot of it is, all the doom and gloom. That we're all supposed to be talking more about successes. We got to talk about successes, which we have plenty of. It's great. I mean, that's why exhibits like you had here about the crab traps. What a great example. I mean, that thing is, it's a perfect example of we have a solution to this terrible thing happening that, the whales are bummed out, the crab fishermen are bummed out, we're bummed out because we love crab, everyone's bummed out about the situation, right? And yet there is a solution, and good on that. The opportunity here in California is so fantastic, because people here in the state, they care about the environment, and they're willing to work together and get stuff done in the right direction. I mean, this is kind of a sidebar, but the Monterey Bay Aquarium, our Seafood Watch program, which hopefully, everyone in the world's familiar with because it's so fabulous. We are currently being sued by the Maine lobster fishery and the whole delegation from Maine and the Massachusetts lobster people. It's just like a really ugly lawsuit. And it's about the highly endangered northern right whale. And of course, the fishermen, the lobster people are saying it's ship strikes, and the ship strike people are saying it's the lobster people, and the lobster people, and everyone's saying, oh, it's discarded fishing gear, it's not the lobster people. Anyway, the point is, the answer is ropeless gear, ropeless lobster traps. Like, the answer exists. Yeah, it would cost money for all those people to, retrofit their boats. The whole thing wouldn't even cost all that much, like $10 or $15 million or something. I look at that and I'm like, okay, some donor that cared about these, they really cared about whales, could write that check, but that's another matter. Anyway, where solutions exist, we got to really talk about those. I mean, they're inspiring because change always starts somewhere, and it usually starts locally. And the thing that's so fantastic about working here in California is, like, we're the leader in environmental policy in the nation, and we always have been. And we've migrated that leadership to the coast and now to the ocean, and everyone looks at us around the country. I mean, everyone who cares. And I mean, the point is, we made these changes, and the state, we've got a huge tourism economy. I mean, that, like, obviously one can complain about everything wrong with California's economy these days, but I mean, I don't buy into, it's like too much environmental overregulation. I mean, the fact that 40 million people live in the state, and we have this beautiful protected coastline, from Santa Barbara all up the coast, is unbelievable. And, that was because of people voting for bond initiatives, and because private funders, people got the right people in office and all of that. That's just like people cared.
The fact that you're able to kind of zoom out and say California is a leader in this way just is indicative of the fact that you have been able to participate at that global level. And you've been a champion of ocean conservation in international spaces for quite some time. And I'm wondering, like, either before or after the aquarium opened, was there a specific issue or a bill or something that spurred you to cross from, hey, our job is not just to inspire people, but we're actually going to take a stance on an issue?
Yeah, that's such an interesting question, because traditionally, science museums, don't like to take position. Museums generally, actually, all of the museum world, I mean, I learned early on, I mean, even for people talking about climate, it was like, we just want to present the points of view. We're not taking a stand. And it was looked down upon to take a stand, actually, because we're supposed to just be an unbiased, trusted source of information. Well, for us, I mean, for me, because I was, like, driven by the need for conservation action, like, from the beginning, that really bugged me. And I think we took our first step when we did in '96, when we did the open sea. We called it the Outer Bay Wing because we're such purists. Like, it's got a link to Monterey Bay. Mm-hmm. And yeah, like, you won't find yellowfin tuna here in the bay, but in the Outer Bay, yeah. Outer Bay.
Expert marketing and branding move right there. Yeah, well done.
Yeah, well, then our exhibit team, after a while, they're like, what the hell's the Outer Bay, like. Anyway, now it's called the Open Sea, which is, like, kind of annoys me, but I stayed out of it because,
You got to pick your battles, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, we're pretty hardcore about our Monterey Bay, or anchoring to our place.
As you should be.
The place where we are. But in doing that wing, it was like, not only we want to finish the habitat story, and we wanted to do, the further offshore and eventually do the deep sea, but we want to take the story offshore of what's happening in the ocean, and, just the whole idea that, this bay is not just an enclosed little body of water, there are animals here. So part of that wing, as people will recall, when you get out toward the windows and the deck, originally, now we have a plastic pollution exhibit, but the first exhibit was called Ocean Travelers, and it was about the migratory animals coming through, and talking about conservation and kind of like the perils that they came across. And we did what was called a penny poll, which museums did, which this is now like, you put, I don't even know what the issues were, 2 or 3 issues in front of people, and like put a penny in the box, like if you agree with this.
Like a vote. We're going to vote for the thing. Yeah.
And we also had we had postcards, stamped postcards, like write your congressperson now and tell them like what you think about the ocean, or what they should be doing about it. And that was pretty light touch. That was before we actually started doing actual, build a policy and advocacy group and, do lobbying and, full-on advocacy.
If you haven't visited the Seymour Marine Discovery Center at UC Santa Cruz in a while, or ever, you really should come visit us. We are right on the bluffs of the beautiful Monterey Bay, with an aquarium full of local species and a bunch of hands-on science exhibits that help you understand what's happening in our ocean and along our coast. We are connecting the incredible research happening at UC Santa Cruz with real-world solutions for our coastal community. We don't want science to just sit on a shelf. We want it to shape decisions, inspire kids, and help our community feel equipped to act. So if you care about the future of our ocean and our coastal community, or you just want to experience a place that makes you feel a little more connected to it, come visit us at the Seymour Marine Discovery Center. Science Solutions, Santa Cruz.
Back in the 70s, people still thought the ocean generally was so vast we couldn't affect it. And probably particularly here in Monterey Bay, which, it looks pretty great. Compared to, Boston Harbor or something. And
Sure.
But, the more we all learned about the state of the global ocean, and even here, we had raw untreated sewage going right into the bay. We had, we had a lot of, there was heightened awareness about the impact of all the pollution issues, especially, and how they were affecting the ocean, even here, even though you couldn't see it. And so that, that really evolved. And then I guess I just finished that chapter. When we really escalated things was when we did in 97, a couple of years after we opened the open sea wing, we decided we were going to, attendance shot back up to 2.3 million visitors, which was like amazing. We're like, great, now we can do like a really heavy hitting special exhibition about conservation, and it doesn't really matter if like no one comes, whatever, they're like, Julie's always wanted to do this, so we're just gonna like go for it. And I'm like, yay. And so we did this exhibit called Fishing for Solutions, What's the Catch? And it was about the global fisheries crisis. And that spawned, and it was about solutions. It was, bycatch, and talked about turtle excluder devices, and it was, covered the solutions to the problems and the solutions. But that was when the Seafood Watch program began. And then we really got excited about that. It started just, it's like, oh, we're doing an exhibit about the global fisheries crisis. We better get our restaurant menu in order or we're going to look really stupid. And so we, started looking at what we were serving and cleaning up the menu. And then we thought, well, the public would be interested in this. And then it turned into what it is today, which is like the global standard for, sustainability ratings of the global fisheries that come into the U.S. market, globally traded fisheries. So
when you started Seafood Watch, could you ever dream that it would be a globally known brand?
No, we didn't. It started very modestly, and we were bolstered along at the time. The idea really picked up steam, and there were a few West Coast ocean conservation funders that got interested in it. There are things much more front and center in people's minds about what's happening in the ocean right now, but the way that I like to talk about solving the seafood situation is that, we know how to do it right. Like, we know what sustainable aquaculture and wild caught fishing looks like. We have it happening. here in the U.S. I mean, we didn't for a long time. Our whole coast was declared a federal disaster for all the ground fish, and like had to reopen with a whole new quota management system. Now we see, seafood on our local menus that we didn't have for a while, and then obviously there are other countries that have always been ahead of us in terms of fisheries management, and so, we know how to do it right. You've got to have science and data. You've got to have laws, and you need to have enforcement. It's not rocket science, and it's kind of the most basic harm we're doing to the ocean. Is extracting all this biomass, and we know how to fix that. Meantime, we have to fix these bigger, harder things at the same time. But and also from the aquarium, because we reach 2 million people that come through the door, and they want to know what to do. And it was kind of a winner thing because it's very consumer focused. It's like, okay, what can you do? Well, like, do you know where that shrimp came from? Okay, you don't want to know where that shrimp came from. Let us, tell you about, tell you more about it. So,
well, I want to shout out Melissa Mahoney, who I believe is in the audience. There she is, right there. She's give it up for Melissa.
Yeah.
Melissa was actually on the program, so everybody should go watch her episode. She's the executive director of the Monterey Bay Fisheries Trust. So she is the one bringing all of these scientists and solution makers together to solve the fisheries problem right here at home. So thank you, Melissa.
Yeah, everyone needs to send money to Melissa Mahoney.
There we go. Ow! Yeah.
That is a...
She'll be at the front door on the way out. Okay, no.
The Monterey Bay Fisheries Trust is a super cool, it's like one of the very most innovative fisheries solution projects that I've ever known about. And I was on the California Nature Conservancy Board during the years when it was invented, and I won't go into the details on it. I'm sure, they can listen to her talk about it, but it's really innovative and really cool. And it's about keeping the fishing enterprise going here. Like, what does sustainable fishing look like here? It doesn't have to be a win-lose. And they actually just got some funding, super exciting. Hopefully you don't mind if I share. They just got some funding for something that actually, I'm not taking credit, but I had suggested this 20 years ago when I was in this terrible meeting in Monterey in this dark room with one of the local fishing guys who were all related to the city council members. And he brought out his log book, and that was like this thick, and kind of, he was like a second or third generation, and basically was making the claim, like, fishing's fine. Fishermen always know where the fish are. So there's like no problem. We don't need any protected areas or more. There's a lot of fish out there, it's just, I don't know, like, we don't know where they are, but they know where they are. So like, we don't need to do anything. I never quite understood how that worked, but it's always just been very contentious, and it still is everywhere in the U.S., including here. But it's a really innovative solution that, well, back to the funding, they just got funding to do a bunch of analysis of, what would sustainable, what's the economic model for like the future of fishing here in Monterey Bay? Like, what would that look like? And let's like move in that direction. And, it's going to look different, just like all the fishers here. Now they're depending on crab and salmon. Oh, that's a loser. I mean, poor people, that's not good.
It's a rough life, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And, so what's the value of, what's been here over time? How's that moving? And how, what could it look like in the future? So anyway, it's a really exciting project.
Well, you mentioned a moment ago this sort of like convergence of policy and funding and interest and all that stuff. So when you're in front of an international delegation, let's say, and you're advocating for the good work, I wonder sometimes, can other places replicate what we have here, or do we have some special sauce in the Monterey Bay region that has allowed us to have all of these huge conservation successes?
There is great conservation, or great ocean lake stewardship, I would call it, happening all over the world in different places. And much of it is happening in places where indigenous knowledge is driving that. And it's only, like scale, it's industrial scale fishers and developed nation, invasion of their resources that is causing the problem. It's not, and also us creating a market for stuff that they have even beyond it, like coral wildlife trade, we're creating the market for that, and therefore, local communities in Fiji and the Philippines are out dynamiting and dumping cyanide on coral reefs. I guess it's kind of a complicated question, in that there are good things happening, and I think especially where they're happening, well, that's one thing. The other key, there have been studies that I know our foundation's been involved in funding, looking at what are the ingredients that lead to more sustainable fisheries, where there's, for example, as measured by there's less, fish population depletion, for example, and data, as I mentioned, data. So, places where there's actually science and data acquisition, which isn't everywhere, but say places like Australia, New Zealand, and Iceland, they've always had pretty effective, never mind things people may not agree with, like whaling, for example, but in terms of fisheries management, where there's science and data, that's a necessity. And then where there's, where there's an important economic value, say like Alaska, because it's a big piece of their economy, they're super engaged in wanting to make sure that their fisheries policies protect that resource where they make a lot of money, so like they don't allow salmon aquaculture, why would they want that? Like they don't want that. And they were very progressive early on in making better management laws for halibut, for example, that, was not going well. Where there's governance, where people can see the value of governance because there's resource to protect, and they have data, and then they have enforcement. The enforcement is a big problem. And, as much of the UCSC team who, works on MPAs and other places, no, it really is a challenge in these places where, you set up MPAs and then there's no enforcement happening. And, we have this 30 by 30 goal globally, as most people probably have heard about it. Let's protect 30% of the, land and water area by 2030. And as far as the ocean area, protected, well, the sanctuary system, for example, doesn't afford complete, it's not a no-take zone by any means, and there's only a very small percentage of the global marine protected areas that are fully protected no-take reserves. And I'm not saying they all should be. Obviously that's not feasible, but even creating management schemes that work, again, requires science and policy decisions and enforcement, and those are like missing. Those are so hard in so many regions.
How are you feeling about the progress on 30 by 30?
I think on the land front, I think it's really good. The ocean part, I think my main concern is that, we've got these like MPAs, but
MPA being a marine protected area.
Marine protected area, yeah, but really like what are the protections happening there? Now we have this really exciting new, treaty that just got ratified, this biodiversity beyond national jurisdiction, meaning the high seas. It's a high seas treaty, as some people may have heard about, out beyond the 200-mile exclusive economic zone of all the countries and all those little islands down in Western Pacific. They all have like huge EEZs. Out in the open sea in the middle of the ocean, it's, total like Wild West, and there's no enforcement, and it's just all the fishing out there is managed by these regional fisheries management orgs. And anyway, this is the first time that the UN treaty has been agreed to, and then, once it passes, it has to be ratified by enough countries. Of course, the U.S. hasn't signed. We never ratify anything that's not about us. And so, someone here would remember when the law of the sea passed. It was like 50 years ago or something. We never signed that thing, and we never will.
1976.
Yeah.
Thanks, Melissa.
50 years ago, yeah, we never signed that thing. And anyway, this BB&J thing, we haven't signed it, don't expect it to sign it. The 60-plus countries have signed it, so it's ratified now. And it just puts forward to create some policy agreements about how we're going to use the open sea. And that's like a huge daunting task, but a lot of the advocates, what they're hoping out of it is that some protected areas will happen, and there aren't really protected areas out in the open sea. And sounds crazy hard to do and complicated to me, but I mean, at least it's sort of a framework, a next level framework that's kind of defining that this is a common good, everyone's accessing it like there's no tomorrow. When you kind of, you have these management bodies that are combinations of groups of countries, and they're going to fight that. It's going to be hard to get this to work given the existing crazy framework. But in any case, it's a positive development. Let's just say that.
Yeah, I mean, you seem optimistic about it. Now
I'm optimistic. Practical/optimistic.
You've mentioned now two things that are kind of points of optimism. I mean, Melissa's work and what's going on at the Monterey Bay Fisheries Trust, and now this new international treaty. Is there anything else that, especially if we kind of hone into the Monterey Bay region, is there anything that truly, not just like for the media or for the quote, but like truly you deeply, what gives you optimism about the Monterey Bay region?
Well, I mean, look offshore, like this place was totally decimated of marine mammals 50 or 100 years ago. So, I guess when our graphics on the rail of the Monterey Bay Aquarium, the idea there is, this is what it looks like when things are done right. This is what it looks like. It didn't used to look like this, and the scientists often debate about, I mean, I don't know, some of the listeners may have heard, may have read Steve Palumbi's book, The Death and Life of Monterey Bay. I think I have that right. That kind of puts forward like the whole bay was dead, because of all the over extraction, and the sardines crashing and the whaling and the brown pelican decline because of DDT and everything. But that's an overstatement, in my opinion. I mean, it wasn't dead. It was in pretty good shape, even in the 70s when we started working in the aquarium. But the point is, it's continued to recover like crazy. I mean, and that's what happens, when people take action. It's remarkable. And same thing as I was saying with the coastal protection here, and all the strength of the conservation organizations. And yeah, we have kind of a dreamland state here where people care about the environment, and they'll vote to put the right people in office, and they'll vote for these bond initiatives to fund conservation. And we have wealthy philanthropists that, it's an ideal scenario, but that's neither here nor there. The point is, the ocean can recover if you give it a chance. That's the main message. We've been doing work on Pacific tunas at the aquarium ever since we decided to do the outer bay wing, and now you know the story behind that. And because we had to figure out how to keep tunas in an exhibit, like no one had done that except for in Japan, the big aquariums there. So we started hanging out with the Japanese, which was really cool. And then we started working with scientists at Hopkins, Dr. Barbara Block, who is a physiologist and was developing really advanced satellite tags. This is like 30 years ago. And we could work out the methods for implanting them because our team knew how to catch and bring into captivity and get to feed, their husbandry people. And then the scientists, design the research to do the R&D. So we did all this R&D and have done a huge amount of tagging, both of Atlantic bluefin and now Pacific bluefin. And the Pacific bluefin, it wasn't until, 15 years ago, as far as I could tell, anyone was very concerned about the Pacific. Everyone was like, it's so big, it's giant. And the Atlantic Ocean, we've been hammering on for many more centuries. The Atlantic bluefin tuna cratered in the 80s, and still overfishing was happening, and it's finally recovering. No one is really worried about the Pacific, and lo and behold, no surprise, everyone started fishing over here instead of there. And also, you have this huge population growth and, big nations out doing industrial scale fishing in the Pacific. And the Pacific tuna populations are, started declining and really not doing well at all. And so the Pacific bluefin, it was at 3 or 4% of its virgin biomass, meaning when they first started measuring it. And the tagging data that we contributed, and then we had our policy team on the science, the science group for the quota making body for it. And finally, enough nations agreed to like set tighter quotas. And anyway, it's already recovered to 24% of its version of from 3% to 24% in literally like 5 years.
Wow.
And so, there are many long-lived species, and, like a tuna, they reproduce a lot and they grow fast. And so that's a happy story, but that's a great story, a point of optimism and hope, I mean, and fish populations, they can recover. And again, it's not, obviously for all of us scientists, it's mainly about ecosystem health, and, the ocean provides so many important services to all of life, but it's got to be a living ocean. Like a dead ocean isn't going to do all that stuff for us, like sequester massive amounts of carbon into the ocean, and provide primary protein for 1 billion people on the planet, and so anyway, I tend to focus on the positive. Probably because I've been running an aquarium for over 40 years,
Sure.
And that's what we do. That's
Yeah.
what we all need to do.
Yeah.
There's plenty of bad news, but we got to focus on the positive. And there are a lot of great solutions out there. And the science community, including all the great folks here at UC Santa Cruz, are doing amazing work that's contributing to so much of that. So I really love all the science, of course.
Well, from the sea otters to the kelp to Seafood Watch to inspiring probably hundreds of millions of people since the aquarium was built, I mean, it's hard to overstate the impact that you have had on this planet. And so, if you can rewind back again, back to your days when you were a student, right here studying that kelp, and you're in that lab and you're looking through that microscope, what would you tell to Julie from the 1970s about what she was just about to embark on, or any advice that you would give to her?
I had no idea what I was getting into. My career trajectory's definitely been like step-by-step incremental. I had no career goals when I was a UCSC student, like many of us in 1970. It was like, I wanted to do science. I wanted to do something involving science, but I didn't really know what. And when I was working on the aquarium, my dad asked me to take over as project director and get it open. And then after that, I'm like, okay, I'm just going to take it year to year. And a lot of my colleagues said, oh, it's going to be boring running it. And I'm like, well, I need to stick around for a year, see how it goes. And then it was like, clearly I'm someone who just like really likes challenge. I've got to learn new stuff all the time. And I love learning all the business stuff. It's like the science, fine. That was that phase. All those algae names are taken over by spreadsheets and financial statements. Although I still can resurrect a lot of algae names, surprisingly. The problem is the names have all changed, and so it's meaningless. It's so annoying. And people are like, Julie, you're going to get back out in the field and, nerd out on algae again? And I'm like, I don't know. It's not as important for me to know the names, but I do want to keep hanging out with the scientists and learning new things every day, and helping people advance their missions and their goals. And so I don't really have an answer to what I would tell myself, except for I love learning from other people and surrounding myself by interesting people. And so that's what's got me going. And that's what I had to do when I was given this job so young. I didn't know anything about like design or seawater systems or engineering or exhibit design, about anything, Yeah, I don't think I would have given myself any advice. If I had, it would have been like, oh my God, like, don't say yes to that.
Well, I think you are in now week 1 after you have stepped down as the CEO of the Monterey Bay Aquarium. So first of all, congratulations on that.
Oh, yeah, thank you. Mm-hmm.
You have spent your life inviting people to fall in love with the ocean, the majority of your life. And so I just want to invite you one more time, to the folks in the room, the folks on the camera, to make your pitch for why we should love and protect this ocean?
Okay, well, so many reasons, but I think the whole start of the environmental movement, began with concern about what was going on land. We're land animals, and it was way too late that we woke up to, oh, by the way, if you want to protect nature, you got to protect the ocean, because most of nature is ocean. And of course, it's not only 71% of the planet, it's the 99% of living space on Earth, and it's none too soon that we started to pay attention to that most vital driver in the whole biosphere. And so that it's just a simple answer. That's why we need to start understanding it, and we need to start caring for it. We need to start coming up with solutions that are going to enable humanity to thrive alongside a thriving ocean that sustains all of us. And it's I feel like it's a little late to the party, or everyone's late to the party, if you will, of the ocean people. That's what it's a blue planet, and the more we invest in understanding it, like all the great work people here are doing at the university, the more we realize how much we don't know. And still, when I see I don't know what the estimations are of species on the planet, how many undiscovered here and there, I'm just like, what are we even talking about? I mean, the ocean, every day there's scores of things reported around the world that are life forms people have never even heard about, and we haven't even discovered. We've only been down to look at the tiny fraction of it. So from that standpoint, we've got to invest in the science. We've got to have a better understanding of the changes happening, especially the role in climate. I mean, the climate models, as scientists here know, working on it. I mean, we understand the atmosphere, we understand the land. Like, we don't have, when you get to these climate models, the ocean part is like a lot of question marks, a lot of big error bars. It's like, what? And then keep reading some new study that's a whole new take on what's happening there, and also what its role is in maintaining the balance to enable life to exist here, whether it's driving global climate or feeding the world, or sequestering carbon, or making oxygen, or sequestering 90% of the heat since the Industrial Revolution. I mean, it's the main deal, is all I can say about it. But also, I'm finding more and more at the aquarium that, what gets people to fall in love with it is the beauty, and having we don't spend a whole lot of time talking about those facts and figures that I just put out there. We're really aiming for people to be able to make, a memorable time with their family, something that gives them joy, and makes them, for us to have them fall in love with us as an institution, so then we're a trusted voice, which we are, is a big goal, has been a big goal for me, because that our voice, that's where our power is. And so that's kind of what we're trying to do at the aquarium on-site experience, because there's a lot of conservation NGOs out there messaging about things, but like, we've got the real deal here in this crazy digital disconnected world, and that's a precious thing. And so we're really happy that we're going to continue to take care of that treasure, and make sure we're still reinvesting in it, and sharing it with the world, for a bigger and bigger audience.
Well, thank you for being here, Julie Packard, ladies and gentlemen. Julie Packard.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here, Julie. Thank you.